extent of pine forestry in Hawke's Bay has to be seen to be believed. Each of these sprayed circles is a newly planted pine tree. It's hard to comprehend from the ground, but from the air, trees march across kilometres of what was, until quite recently, traditional farmland.
It's not just one farm, it's farm after farm, and I think that's the scale of things that people don't understand.
Porangahau farmer James Hunter is taking us on a flight because he wants New Zealanders to see just how much the land use has changed.
This apparently is good for the country. And suddenly we've got a district that's been swallowed.
More than 1.8 million hectares of New Zealand is planted in pine trees. Many farms have been converted since 2008 to earn carbon credits after the emissions trading scheme was introduced. This year in Hawke's Bay, at least 4 farms were sold to overseas forestry companies, sparking concerns about shrinking rural communities because forests have fewer permanent workers.
No one sees it, no one knows about it. And with all of this, each one of those farms was a landowner, people working on it. So what are we going to capture first?
Joe Farram has had a front row seat to these changes, witnessing the Hawke's Bay landscape being converted from farms to forestry.
Yeah, the transition has been very vast over the last 15 years, and the mindset of land use, and a lot of that mindset has been detrimental to the betterment of New Zealand. A lot of this mindset is for short-term gain, not for longevity of what's best for our land.
From up here, the scale of land use change is just so much clearer. There'd been large pockets of high plantations, and although new government legislation was supposed to curb whole farm conversion, a new report has found that it is still happening, and Hawke's Bay is one of the preferred locations.
This is the dumbest thing New Zealand has done in agriculture.
And despite legislation changes to stop foresters planting up flat and rolling farmland, James and Joe worry that it's still happening.
Look at the classic country down here, guys. Have a look at front. Look at, it's just about flat.
Can't believe the country that's getting planted down here, because there's some beautiful rolling farmland that you can drive around on a tractor. And New Zealand is a food producer. You know, we're producing food for our people and for the export. And once it's gone into trees, it's lost for good. I think it's questionable.
In central Hawke's Bay, Swedish furniture company IKEA believes it's the largest forestry owner in the district, having bought more than 4,300 hectares since 2020. They say the type of land they're planting is appropriate.
Early on it was identified that better farmland, the class 3 and 4, we didn't want to put into trees, so that was sold to the neighbour.
Since 2021, IKEA has bought 28,000 hectares of New Zealand farmland, with another 10,000 currently pending approval in Northland.
It's a fantastic environment, and it's kind of open to overseas investment with, it's a good stable economy.
But he says the move has led to backlash from some rural communities who associate IKEA's forestry with carbon farming, where forests are planted for carbon credits and permanently locked up rather than being harvested.
The whole carbon scene's created quite a wedge between us and farming. And I guess from IKEA's perspective, we just want to walk the talk. We're a good investor in New Zealand. We hear this division between rural land uses, where we used to have a lot of synergies, is really, really sad where it's heading.
But farmers say the relationship with forestry owners would improve if they had confidence the fire risk was being taken seriously and funded properly.
When one of these fires erupts, we're going to see they won't be able to put it out tomorrow. And once it starts, no access. This is broke me the other day, it's nuts.
There are currently no mandatory requirements for forestry owners to mitigate their fire risk, although Fire and Emergency told RNZ it is working closely with them on the issue. The risk became a reality in October when a large block of pine trees went up in flames in Porangahau, burning through nearly 200 hectares of land.
If this was February and the fire took off and it starts at the tops and then it's racing, how do you stop it getting to the village?
Forestry fires is something Joe Farram sees often. He's been fighting them from the air for years.
It puts a lot of pressure on us as a pilot, because suddenly it's the main principal resource to be able to contain a fire.
Do you think, given the increase of pine trees in Hawke's Bay, that it increases the fire risk at all?
Yes, it's got to, because there's more material, there's more fuel. But we're certainly putting ourselves in a dangerous situation, so you're managing risk control.
And for small communities surrounded in pine trees, they feel they're living amongst a ticking time bomb.
By a little bit of good fortune and luck, we have had fires, but we've managed to suppress them quite effectively. But one day the Swiss cheese will line up and we will have a fire that instead of putting it out in 2 or 3 days, it could be up to a month.
The question for the forestry owners is how confident are they that they can stop New Zealand hemorrhaging money chasing fires, and that New Zealand shouldn't have to pay. Your insurances for your house, you shouldn't have to pay for fighting these forest fires. They brought basically the equivalent of petrol tankers into these rural districts. Why should we pay for the cost of fighting something while they're making extraordinary money?
There's going to be a lot of fuel in the forest just by the virtue that the trees are there and standing. And that's a tough one. Like, we can't just have the whole country, I guess, in bare farmland that's, grazed down to 2 millimetres to minimise fire risk. But what we can do, I guess, is have decent fire breaks and decent fire plans in place. So if it does break out, the key consideration is that no one's life is in danger.
I want to see them have to put in their own water supplies. I want some confidence that they can fight a fire when the helicopters are not able to fly. And if the helicopters are not able to fly, what happens to the rest of us downwind? What would Porangahau have been if that was the middle of summer and it was tinder dry?
The Forest Owners Association told RNZ their members spend tens of millions of dollars a year to protect forests from fire, and say they're highly motivated to keep fires out of their valuable investments.
So FENZ have our fire plans, so they know where the dams are, they know where the access points are, they know who the key contact people are, our forest managers are on the ground.
Fire and Emergency wouldn't provide the forestry fire plans to RNZ, but says it has formal service level agreements with 15 forestry companies, and 3 more are being finalised. To fund forestry firefighting, the organisation collects a levy from foresters who insure. However, insurance isn't mandatory, and many companies choose not to.
No, we don't insure for fire. It's prohibitively expensive in New Zealand.
Is there something here that the government could be doing or should be doing?
Thinking. That would be the biggest message. I would want them to be confident that if there's a fire, no one's going back to them saying, "Why didn't you think about it?" Protect us. It's so simple.
Forestry Minister Todd McClay told RNZ the government is taking the risk of forest fires seriously and has strengthened its approach in recent years. He believes forestry owners are doing enough to mitigate the fire risk, and says there's been better coordination between the sector and the fire service, as well as ongoing investment into research, risk mapping and seasonal forecasting. Maps like this one that IKEA has created for one of its central Hawke's Bay sites to identify water sources and access tracks. Although it's not enough to ease the community's fears, the local hapu has been meeting with IKEA since 2022.
They came to the marae, they talked to us, they told us what they had to offer. When you look back on it a couple of years later, actually there's not much to offer.
David Tepini Leach is the chair of Ngāti Kiri. Since the fires, he's written to IKEA, urging them to remove the pine trees planted closest to the village on Stone Ridge.
If you look around the world, and certainly in this day and age, we look into Canada and into the States and other places, and you see the huge forest fires that are occurring in these big plantations, then we've got to be worried about that sort of stuff. With regard to exit and entry from our little isolated town, they're planting all along the road. You can't get out of our town if the forests are burning.
As far as taking the whole Stone Ridge face out of trees, can't see that happening. What we need to do is meet with the community and understand what are the real concerns here related to fire. I can't speak for all forest owners, but I think we're relatively well prepared in the event of a fire.
But would you support legislation that meant that all landowners had to be responsible for the fire risk on their property?
If it's practical and effective, and if it can be implemented in an effective manner, it's no good writing a piece of legislation that only half the population is going to follow.
The hapu is disappointed with IKEA, saying the company made several promises that it's yet to deliver on, such as employment opportunities, riparian planting, shared ownership of recreational areas, and a name change reflecting Ngāti Kiri's presence.
I don't think we got a wonderful deal. We just got a forestry company who told us that they were really friendly. And we're waiting to see how friendly they are. So it's kind of like this is just another, don't want to sound silly, but another wave of colonisation that Ngāti Kiri has to deal with. But small hapus, we're fighting for survival here. We're not really fighting to change the world, we're just fighting to maintain our little bit of the world mō ake tonu atu.
Do you have any hope that IKEA will listen to you?
I do, actually.
Fortunately, we have reasonably good documentation of the meetings and what we've undertaken on the ground, and we feel we've honoured our promises.
The community worries the pine problems seen in Tairāwhiti, with slash and community loss, are creeping down the coast, and Hawke's Bay is set to make the same mistakes.
Forestry people will tell us, don't worry, we've all learnt since then. They are commercial operations who are out there to make a buck where they can, and so I'm not sure that we have any reason to trust them.
All we're doing is pouring cash into the country. We're planting forests, we're buying seedlings, we're buying native seedlings, we're employing local contractors, employing planting crews, carry on employing pruning crews, and we won't realise a return for 28 years. So, we're not extracting a lot of cash out of the country for the benefit of an offshore entity, that's for sure. Put a little bit of a pause on buying farmland at the moment, just fairly contentious, and we'll just focus on buying existing forest at present.
And while new legislation is tightening up rules on what is planted where, the Climate Change Commission estimates another 900,000 hectares of New Zealand will be converted to forestry by 2050.
So you want to go and plant your trees? Cool. Don't leave me with the costs.